Hello, I'm Terence Watts, here with some more information about BWRT. I decided to create these brief videos because this therapy is so outrageously successful, I want to get it out to as many people as possible. A few people, especially therapists, wonder why I don't explain exactly how it works in the very beginning if it's as good as I say it is. It's even being said that it's kept shrouded in mystery in some way because it simply doesn't have a scientific explanation. But actually, it does, as those who train in it discover on the very first lesson. Now, there's a very good reason I don't say too much about the technique to start with, and it's directly related to the way that BWRT works. You see, as soon as you encounter anything new, the early part of the brain is compelled to identify it, and it does this by a kind of best guess or closest match process. But it sometimes makes mistakes. And the trouble is that once it's done that and put the idea into your conscious thoughts, it's very difficult indeed to change it. In fact, you resist all efforts to do so, no matter what anybody else says. And this is why you'll sometimes swear black's white about something or other, only to be astonished later on when you discover you've made a rather silly mistake. And that's where the problem with giving too much detail about BWRT in the beginning comes in. Everybody knows it's a therapy, and so the brain will do its best to work out exactly what sort of therapy it is. It wants to match it up to something it already knows, to avoid having to expend valuable energy learning something new. That's actually an energy-saving process the brain uses all the time. So it'd grab whatever was said about BWRT and make that best guess or closest match decision. Now, what that means is that some people would probably decide it was a sort of hypnotherapy, though it's actually nothing like it. Others would go for the idea that it was NLP, that's Neuro-Linguistic Programming, to give it its full name. Some would decide it was Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, CBT for short. Maybe a version of therapeutic tapping, or a form of counselling, a type of regression, maybe exposure therapy, or something else they already know about. Once they've made their mind up, they can all too easily think they've already done that and there's nothing new here, or perhaps that it doesn't work for them, or maybe that they just don't want to have anything to do with it. And that'd be unfair, because BWRT really isn't like any of those, because there really isn't anything else like BWRT. When the training is carried out, it's approached in a very specific way that's designed to keep the mind searching rather than making a premature decision. I do that by triggering a high level of curiosity to get people honestly searching for the answer before explaining exactly how it works. And it's at that moment that the full potential of BWRT is instantly recognizable. Having said all that, I do like to give some idea of what happens, of course. I did cover it in some detail in the first video, but in a nutshell, BWRT works with the very early part of the brain, which is actually silent as far as conscious awareness is concerned. We just can't feel what's happening there at all. It's actually a very simple bit of kit that mostly just checks to see if what's going on around us is familiar or not, and if it is, sets off the same response as it did last time. It's not a thinking or reasoning part, so there's no judgment about whether what it's doing is okay or not okay. It just does it anyway, and it's only much later when the whole thing reaches consciousness that we know what's happening. And by then, everything is fired up and running at full steam. If it's a good thing, that's wonderful. But if it's fear, for example, then it's enormously difficult to get a grip of it, because the next wave has already been fired up and is already on its way to the conscious part of the brain. And that's what most therapies work with, what the conscious mind is already aware of. And this is where BWRT is different. Now, you'll sometimes read that such and such a therapy works directly with the limbic system, or the flight or fight response, as it's also known. Well, BWRT works much earlier than that, before the fight or flight response has even been fired up. So once we know what it is you want to fix, we show you how to catch it and stop it in its tracks before it sets off the usual reaction. That gives us plenty of time to make the changes you need to make to ensure the problem simply doesn't fire up anymore. So BWRT really is unique. It's not like hypnotherapy, CBT or counselling. There's no finger tapping, touching or stroking. There's no chanting, no need to discuss your intimate secrets, no need to face your fears or go cold turkey. It's only necessary to know how you want to feel instead of how you already do feel. And that's important, because the only thing it has in common with other therapies is that you have to know what you do want rather than what you don't want. I don't want to feel like this anymore. It's not anywhere near the same thing as far as therapy is concerned, as I want to feel confident and in control. It might surprise you to know that simple issues like fear of driving or fear of eating in public, maybe public speaking, can usually be overcome in just one session, 2 at the most. And even where it's something more complicated like depression, addiction or OCD, the therapy is frequently only 4 or 5 sessions. It is fair to say though that if you have a serious alcohol or drug problem, you might need a few follow-up sessions. That's quite usual with all methods of working with such serious conditions, of course. Though because BWRT works differently, there'll be far fewer of those follow-ups. It certainly doesn't require a meeting every week or a set number of meetings in a certain number of days. Because of its effectiveness, BWRT has spread rapidly all around the world since its beginning in October 2013, so there are now many thousands of people who've benefited from it. There's no therapy in the world, though, that is a panacea for all ills, and as good as BWRT is, it cannot always work. Well, not first time anyway. But on the odd occasion, and it is a very rare occasion, where we don't get the result we want, it's usually easy to track down the problem and sort it out on the second run. And with BWRT, once it's fixed for good. And that's all for this video. I'm Terence Watts, the creator of BWRT, and I'll see you with another video again soon.